You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 Gov.biz Radio, a CBS station.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. You're listening to us on CBS radio station gov.biz, 1580 AM in the Washington, D.C. area, or on the web, WMClive.com, where you can also find links to podcasts of previous shows. And let us hear from you. Call the comment line 347-903-WMC1. That's 347-903-WMC1. Or you can tweet hashtag WMCLive. Or you can email us at womensmediacenterlive@gmail.com. This week we're celebrating women veterans, plus getting a sneak preview of the Gala Women's Media Awards, with 2 awardees and the president of the Women's Media Center as our guests. But first, behind the headlines. If you're like me, you woke up Wednesday morning into a stew of unfamiliar emotion, the savor of triumph, a renewed trust in that amorphous entity termed the people, and political glee. President Obama had won handily, even in some purple or previously red states. He's gained a second term, during which he has nothing to lose and everything to gain, by aiming for greatness, by taking risks, by pushing the edges out, by calling conservative legislators bluff when they threaten to filibuster, and by not forgetting who put him back on top. Women, chiefly. He says, yes, we can. I say, yes, we did. We can also celebrate a range of other wins, a bouquet of firsts, and some delicious bad guy losses. In the Senate contests, Massachusetts' Elizabeth Warren reclaimed the Kennedy seat, but she'll soon make it her own. Missouri's Claire McCaskill trounced Akins, you know, the guy who thought women's bodies shut down to prevent pregnancy from rape. Indiana Senate wannabe Richard Murdoch went down to defeat after conceding that pregnancy from rape is possible, but a gift from God. Tea Party incumbent Joe Walsh, who had called Obama a tyrant, and who, by the way, refused to pay child support for his own kids, tanked after trying to smear double amputee, decorated veteran Tammy Duckworth in Illinois. Another Tammy, Baldwin of Wisconsin, is the first openly lesbian woman to be elected to the Senate. Democrat Representative Mazie Hiron of Hawaii is the Senate's first elected Asian American woman. Democrat Heidi Heitkamp became the first woman senator from North Dakota, until now pretty red terrain. New Hampshire is the first state to elect an all-female team. The governorship and the congressional delegation, 2 Democrats in the House, 1 Republican, and 1 Democrat in the Senate. There's now a record number of women in the Senate, 20. Of course, before we hyperventilate with joy, let's remember context. That would be 20 out of 100. The right wing wanted a war on women? Well, look at our response. We're beautiful when we're angry. We also sent a powerful other message, that despite the Citizens United decision and the billions poured into super PACs that bought racist and sexist ads, they still could not buy our votes. So immediately they're threatening us with rolling over a fiscal cliff. Well, despite that, happy Election Day results. Now, the real work begins. Our first guest is Anu Bhagwati, who is the co-founder and executive director of Service Women's Action Network, SWAN, S-W-A-N for short. She's a former captain and company commander of over 400 Marines. She has testified before Congress. She advised the White House and the United Nations. She's spoken to countless audiences on challenges faced by military women, including combat exclusion policies, military sexual trauma, the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy, and the VA healthcare and benefits system. She left the Marines because she felt she could not get justice for her women troops over sexual harassment and assault. She's also a graduate of the Women's Media Center Progressive Women's Voices program. Here, in honor of women veterans, is Anu Bhagwati of SWAN. Welcome, Anu, to Women's Media Center Live. It's good to have you here. Good to have you here. Let's talk about the elections just a few days ago, and there were a number of women vets running. How did they do?
Well, we have some exciting news. Only 4 women have ever served in Congress in U.S. history, and we had 10 running for Congress. We know for sure that 2 have been elected. Tulsi Gabbard, a Democrat out of Hawaii, Tammy Duckworth, a Democrat out of Illinois for Congress. We're still waiting to hear the results about Martha McSally, a Republican out of Arizona. But even if only Tulsi and Tammy are elected, that will be more women that's serving in Congress at one time than at any other time in history. And of course, if Martha McSally also gets elected, it will be incredibly historic for women veterans, I think for women generally in Congress.
That's fantastic. There's going to be a record number of women in the Senate, too. I mean, we're creeping in there. We're still not at parity anywhere near it, but we're getting there. Did the women vets run specifically on the kind of issues that SWAN has taken up and given leadership on, like women in combat and this military sexual trauma?
I mean, you've got 3 extraordinary combat vets in Tulsi Gabbard, Tammy Duckworth, and Martha McSally. Martha McSally, in particular, a retired colonel, she was the first fighter pilot to serve in combat in history, and so she's definitely a pioneer. But even more interestingly, she challenged the Department of Defense. She sued the Secretary of Defense when she was still in uniform over the Pentagon's policy that forced servicewomen to wear the headscarf in Saudi Arabia, and the Pentagon ended up overturning that policy. So she's really paved the way for women in uniform today. But it's interesting that in the last election, veterans didn't fare as well as we had hoped. This election, may look a little different for us. So I think the public, the American public, is slowly realizing again that veterans are an important part of the American fabric and will make an incredibly important contribution to our government.
Well, and the consciousness seems to be changing. I'm sure not enough, but all things being relative, over the unique bravery and position and obstacles that women vets face. I mean, the military sexual trauma, which was a new phrase even just a couple of years ago, in no small part due to the work that you and SWAN and such groups have done. There's a real changed consciousness about that now, or so it seems to me as a civilian.
There really is, and I don't think this consciousness would have been possible in the year 2012 without our wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and it might be hard to sort of hear that, but women have done such extraordinary things in combat over the last decade, things that were really not expected, I think, by military leadership, but women exceeded all of those expectations. Many have lost their lives, over 140, and thousands have returned with wounds of war. And so we're sort of beyond the point where we were about 6-7 years ago, where we had members of Congress saying, "Oh, women shouldn't be in combat," and American public wouldn't be able to stand if women came back in body bags. But actually, the American public has been a lot more, I think, understanding and proud of servicewomen's service and sacrifices overseas than anybody expected. And so things have really changed. And I think once the American public realized servicewomen are doing these difficult jobs, they're volunteering in an all-volunteer force, and doing so remarkably, a little bit of room opened up, a little more I think compassion was possible, and more interest in what is it that servicewomen face, what kind of challenges, and then we were able to really make some headway on issues of sexual harassment, sexual assault. Domestic violence is still a hard one because it's so widespread in the military, both among families that are sort of dual household military, where both both partners or spouses are serving, and also, of course, spouses who are, or civilians who are affected by domestic violence. But on the issue of sexual violence, we've made a ton of headway. It's been remarkable, especially the last couple of years, where there's not a single stakeholder that is not actively working on this issue. Both parties in Congress, every military leader who probably wished he or she never would have had to prioritize this issue. I would say it is the second most important issue on the tables of military leaders after our operations in Afghanistan and elsewhere around the world.
Is military sexual
very high
trauma
priority for everyone? Has everything been solved? Absolutely not. We have a long way to go, but the consciousness is there, and people are asking hard questions, and they're not hiding the fact that this is a huge problem for the military.
And that there has been, at least to date, very little support systems then for women who have survived military sexual trauma or who are afflicted with it in the wake of assaults or harassment. So that's beginning to change. Yeah.
I think that the main issue is really that service members find themselves stuck within the confines of the military judicial system, and that's it's sort of hard to imagine unless you've seen it or been through it. But the military judicial system, the criminal justice system, is no better at prosecuting rape or sexual assault than the civilian criminal justice system.
Right.
Rapes are notoriously hard to prosecute, but the problem with the military is that there's really no outside deterrent to perpetrators who are committing these crimes, or to commanders who are given far too much leeway in determining the fate of a perpetrator, whether or not he even sees the inside of a courtroom. That's really the main difference in the military. There is commander influence on the process. That would never happen in the civilian world. Your boss wouldn't be able to influence, at least not legally, the outcome of whether or not your perpetrator goes to trial.
Right.
In the military, that's actually policy. Right now, colonels are allowed to determine whether or not a sexual assault case goes to trial. We've helped that process along. It used to actually be junior officers who had that authority, but we'd like to see that authority go to trained lawyers, to prosecutors, like it is in the civilian world. Folks who know the law, folks who are not supervising in any way, shape, or form the alleged perpetrator or the victim, but folks who know the law and are willing to and capable of making an impartial decision.
We've only got about a minute left. Time is really flying. What's next for SWAN? I know that you've been in the forefront, of so many issues of women in combat, of as we talked about military sexual trauma, of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Not that all of those are solved, but what's next? Just in about 30 seconds.
Well, there are a couple of things that we're very excited about this fall. Finally, after the elections, we're working on a very important amendment that has been introduced by Senator Shaheen, which would allow servicewomen who've been raped or are victims of incest to have federal coverage for abortion in those cases of rape. And so right now, servicewomen who are raped, who become pregnant, will have to pay for their abortions out of pocket. And this is something that's absolutely unbelievable. And I think very few people actually know about that. If you're a federal employee in another agency, no problem. The government will cover you, but not so for servicewomen.
But not so.
We're also trying to make sure that service members who are raped, assaulted, or harassed get the same benefits for their mental health or physical health disabilities as combat veterans do for their injuries or wounds. And right now there's a really horrible double standard that the VA has established, where sexual trauma survivors actually have to provide an inordinate amount of evidence that doesn't even exist to get that disability compensation. And
it's a women's work is never done. It's a women's work is never done. We have to go. I'm so sorry, but please come back because we want to stay on this issue. We'll take a short break here while you can let us know what you think about women vets via email at womensmediacenterlive@gmail.com or Twitter, #WMCLive. I'm Robin Morgan, and this is Women's Media Center Live. Next, 3 previews of the Women's Media Awards, so stick around. Tomorrow is Veterans Day. If you want to learn more about women vets and the special obstacles they face, Go to SWAN, that stands for Service Women's Action Network. Servicewomen.org is the URL. SWAN has spearheaded legislative reform and litigation to end military rape, sexual assault, sexual harassment, and domestic violence, and to eliminate all barriers to equal opportunity for service women. You can donate or volunteer to support their work, or just give them a shout-out of encouragement. Servicewomen.org. SWAN.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 gov.biz radio, a CBS station.
And we're back. Our next guest is the president of the Women's Media Center. Julie Burton is a veteran leader. She's a strategist, a manager, a fundraiser, and an activist for women's rights and for progressive causes. She was the youngest CEO ever of a national pro-choice political action committee, Voters for Choice. She created the Women's Council of People for the American Way. She developed and ran Project Kids Smart, many, many other things. But most of all, we're so delighted to have her as the president of the Women's Media Center. Julie, welcome to Women's Media Center Live.
Hi, Robin. I'm very excited to be on Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Well, this is like coming home when you're already home, but it's so good to have you here. All right, let's plunge right in. When you came on to us, you came on as a consultant. And then we sort of fell madly in love with you and took over your life. Did you ever think that this would sort of eat up your hours 24/7 the way it has?
I think this has been my experience with the women's movement in general. I care so passionately about it, and I have always been affected by strong women leaders, barrier breakers like yourself, like Gloria, like Jane. And I think coming into the Women's Media Center for me was an opportunity to take every skill I had developed earlier and this whole life set of knowledge and move it into what I think is the biggest frontier left yet for women, which is media. It's about power, and we don't have it in media. 3% of women in media have power. That means 97% of the people making decisions in media are men. And I see this as an opportunity to take our cumulative and group media skills, writing skills, strategic skills, political skills, and where you bring those to bear in the right way to try to change and improve the status of women in media.
Well, you do that all the time, and we're in awe of you because you're like the Energizer Bunny, and it's always with humor and with just an amazing sunny energy. I mean, take a minute before we get on to the gala and back to the Women's Media Center, and tell people who is Julie Burton.
Well, I grew up in Utah. I'm the daughter of an artist and an engineer. My mother, Dee Burton, still lives in Utah. My father has passed away. I'm the great-granddaughter of pioneers, men and women who walked across the country. And when I think about that, I think of Ann Richards telling her story about Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire and Ginger doing all the dancing backwards. I think about these pioneer women. Yeah, my great-grandmother walked across the country, but she was wearing full, long dresses and heavy skirts and carrying twice the weight. It's one of those pictures. So I come from that background, that stock. The formative years that probably shaped me and my direction and care and passion for women's issues were my high school and junior high school years in the 70s. And there was a lot going on. There were movements. There was the Vietnam War, and I had a brother enlist in the Army. He enlisted not because he supported the war. He enlisted because he had a low draft number, and that was an interesting lesson on me about someone trying to survive rather than supporting an issue. And the other things going on in the 70s that, I was young, so I wasn't in the mix, but I'm hearing it every day on the TV, and you're hearing, your parents talk about it, was the anti-war movement, the National Women's Political Caucus, Watergate, important court cases. There was a court case, which is hard to believe now that this even had to happen. There was a court case about wearing clothes of your choice and political messages on clothes, which allowed me to wear jeans to school. Made me very happy. That was a huge thing then, but seems like a lot to fight over for clothes.
And where did you make the leap into political action and then this remarkable career?
Well, my leap into political action probably, let me say what shaped, I think, this focus and was what Ms. Magazine used to call the click moment.
Mm-hmm.
I was in high school, and I was sitting in my classroom. It was an English classroom. And the teacher, who had never discussed any issues or civic issues at all, announced to the class that the Equal Rights Amendment ratification effort in Utah had been defeated, and the entire classroom applauded. They cheered. And I didn't expect that. I had not been talking to my classmates and friends about that. I was shocked, and I was surprised my teacher would talk about it. I was stunned my classmates felt that way, and I was so shocked that anybody could be against equal rights. And I think that's the moment when I woke up to the reality of where I was living, and patriarchy and power and politics and people who organize themselves. Because growing up in Utah, it's very conservative, it's very traditional. 10 years before I went to my high school, Karl Rove went there, so he was in the exact same community.
Oh my God! Well, you sure turned out different, and boy, are we glad.
I did turn out differently, and I was a delegate in Utah for Ted Kennedy when he ran for president, and then I ended up coming to Washington, D.C. I got an internship with Ann Lewis, who at the time was the senior woman in either party, the Democratic or the Republican parties. She was the senior woman, and she was the political director, and I had seen her on the McNeil-Lehrer NewsHour. And I had been asked by one of the few Democrats who was working with me at the University of Utah, if there was one thing you could do in Washington, what would that be? How can I help you? And I said, I've seen this woman, Ann Lewis. I'd really love to go work for her. And it turns out he knew people at the DNC, and I ended up having a life-changing internship.
Wow. Take a minute now, because we're slowly winding down out of time. There's never enough time, and leap ahead into the future and talk about the upcoming gala, because we're so glad. It's another thing to thank Ann Lewis for. We're so glad you had the click and had Ann Lewis, but now we're about to have our annual gala, and you are, as usual, in charge of it and making magic happen.
This gala is so important. I cannot underscore how important it is both to celebrate these women champions in media who are barrier breakers, but also to raise funds for our organization to allow us to do our work on media training, media monitoring, our radio show, all of the things we do to change the status of women in media. So we are celebrating Pat Mitchell, who's president and CEO of the Paley Center for Media, Martha Nelson, who is editorial director of Time Inc., Laura Ling, who's host and reporter on E! Investigates, along with her sister, Lisa Ling, who is host of Our America on OWN, the Oprah Winfrey Network, with the Sisterhood is Powerful Award. Sarah Hoye. Yeah, Sarah Hoye, who's an all-platform journalist with CNN. She will be getting the Carol Jenkins Emerging Journalist Award. And our host is Anne Hathaway. And we have an amazing group of people who are presenting award tributes and presentations, including Donna Deitch, who is an award-winning director and filmmaker and on our board and really the visionary behind these awards. Carol Jenkins, who was our first president of the Women's Media Center and a barrier breaker herself, having been an anchor for NBC in New York for years. Sheryl Sandberg, the great Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook. Someone named Robin Morgan.
Oh, I don't know who she is. She probably talks a lot.
Sarah Jones, who is the creative genius, artist, actor, and playwright. Gloria Steinem. President Bill Clinton. Lorene Arbus, who was one of our founding board members, and I think really importantly for what we're doing with these awards, she was also the first woman programmer on a network in the United States, a barrier breaker herself. Barbara Walters, one of our leading journalists of all time, and they're first in many cases for women, Jane Fonda, Jody Evans, who's chair of our board, and Sally Cohn, who I am so particularly proud of. She is a graduate of our Progressive Women's Voices program. She is now a contributor on Fox, and she was featured last week in the New York Times, a story just about her. And she is going places and in a big way, and we're very proud of her, and she'll be doing interviews on the go.
Well, I can't wait, it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful, both, like Gloria says, it's an evening of serious fun. And I get to present the Social Media Award, which is my special thrill because it's the media of the future. As usual, you have talked mostly and praised mostly other people, but I got you to talk about yourself, which I feel is a personal triumph. So I will look forward to seeing you and giving you a special hug at the Gala Awards. And I thank you for being on Women's Media Center Live. Dear, wonderful Julie.
Thank you, Robin.
And now it's time for verbal karate. Something is going around, and everyone seems to have caught it. No, it's not the flu, but a phrase that came seemingly out of nowhere and insinuated itself into the mouths of both presidential contenders, of candidates for other offices, their spokespeople and spinners, and the entire pundit planet. Double down. As in, instead of changing, he's doubling down. As in, no, we're going to double down on that. As in, I think we should double down and not retrench. What was this double word that sounded like the description of an ice cream cone, or an extra fluffy comforter, or a Kama Sutra position, or like leftover words from the tongue twister about a dozen damask dinner napkins? So I started to sleuth around. Well, it turns out this phrase for all seasons is the name of a fast food sandwich, also a form of the card game casino, or a name for gambling in general. It's a choreographed cheerleading move. It's a radio station that plays swing, and it's more than one saloon's name. At its heart, though, is the gambling vibe. When you double down, you intensify your investment or risk. You recommit. You affirm your decision. How or why and from where this double designation emerged during the campaigns, I can't seem to find out. If any of you happen to have a clue, do let us know at hashtag WMC Live or email us at womensmediacenterlive@gmail.com, and I may read your conclusion on the air. But this is an example of how language can be used faddishly and fatuously, how quickly a phrase can become so fashionable it's viral, and then how swiftly it can sink from usage. At least double down did seem for a while there to unify candidates, parties, and media that were otherwise at each other's throats in this 700-year-long campaign. Everybody used it, and no one seemed to care that this was a form of bipartisan sharing. Nice, that. Maybe politicians should double down on phrases they and the rest of us have in common and build from there. That would be a triple whammy. Or at least it's a singular thought. It's time for another pause. I'm Robin Morgan, here with Women's Media Center Live. We'll be back with the first recipient of the WMC Lifetime Achievement Award. This is special. Don't go away. Mark your calendars. On November 13, the WMC Women's Media Awards will celebrate 5 journalists for their contributions. The recipients are Pat Mitchell, President and CEO of the Paley Center for Media, Martha Nelson, Editorial Director of Time Inc., Laura Ling, Correspondent for Current TV and Vice President of Vanguard Journalism Unit, Lisa Ling, host of Oprah Winfrey Network's Our America with Lisa Ling, and Sarah Hoye, all-platform journalist at CNN. To buy tickets and sponsorships to the Women's Media Awards in New York, contact Media Awards at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 gov.biz radio, a CBS station.
Welcome back. Our next guest is a media virtuoso. Pat Mitchell has worked in front of the camera and behind it, anchoring the news and reporting for broadcast networks, producing award-winning documentaries when she was president of CNN Productions, becoming the first woman president and CEO of PBS, and currently she's the president and CEO of the Paley Center for Media. She has had multiple Emmy Awards, 5 Peabodys, and 2 Academy Award nominations. She was the first chair of the board of the Women's Media Center, and she is going to be the first recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Women's Media Center, which hereafter will be named the Pat Mitchell Lifetime Achievement Award. Here's the great Pat Mitchell. Welcome, Pat. Welcome to Women's Media Center Live.
It's wonderful to be with you, Robin.
Well, this is such a celebratory event because to receive the first Lifetime Achievement Award from the Women's Media Center, and then it's going to be named after you, is very well deserved. But what I want to start with is, how did a nice girl, English major, they always say we English majors don't make anything of ourselves, who was a teacher in Georgia, how did you launch into this extraordinary career?
The way so many things happen to the lives of nice girls from Georgia and good English majors, by accident. I've sort of found my way navigating through open doors or little slits in open doors and seeing an opportunity and pursuing it, and sometimes driven by need. In the case of the move into media, that was an opportunity that came to a college classmate who said, why don't you write a story about what's going on the college campuses in the 60s for Look magazine? And I did that, and out of that evolved that job, and then that job went away when the magazine folded, and then somebody said, take that story you wrote about China's gang wars and take it to NBC because the networks are looking for those kind of stories. So with no knowledge about what that might mean, I knocked on a few doors, sat in the offices for hours at a time until someone saw me, read the story, and said, well, can you do that for television?
Wow.
I had no idea what do that for television meant, but it seemed like an opportunity, and my need was great because I was unemployed, living in New York City, raising a 5-year-old son, and with no savings account or anything else. So the need drove me there to do something I had never done, thought about doing, or studied to do. But, we always find our way through those situations by asking a lot of questions, which I was never afraid to do, and taking chances. And I certainly took a chance, and frankly, I didn't succeed at all of it. But they put my story on the air without me in it because I was pretty dreadful in front of the camera at that time. But I saw the power. I saw the impact. I mean, the next day that story was seen by millions and people talking about it, and that really hooked me in. Then I was determined to find a job in television. And since television was looking for women because of a regulatory commitment that they had to make every year to people of color and women, I found a few doors open, and I pushed until I found the right one, and started a television career totally by accident, but it was a complete and wonderful marriage of my curiosity about life in the world and work as a journalist.
But the skill set that you developed is so extraordinary. In front of the camera, behind the camera, producing, being an administrator, a CEO. Also, by this time, it's a wonder that you're vertical, that you don't have a concussion from shattering so many glass ceilings. So, I guess the risk taking is behind acquiring. Okay, well, I'll try that now for the next level and the next job. That said, what would you say, given the progress that we've made, we being all women and men of color among journalists, and in fact behind the camera where the real power is, what would you say is the next step to make more progress, to really move things along?
Well, risk-taking is essential, and perhaps it was even easier in the early days when, we had less to lose. But you had to take risks because nothing was planned. None of us had any idea what it meant to be a woman in television, either in front of the camera or behind the camera. And for me, I just pursued the opportunities as they arose, often not believing or not knowing that I had the skill set, but believing that I could learn it or try it. And what I worry a little bit about now, that there are so many more numbers of women in the media, but still no one quite getting to the C-suite except in a few rare instances.
Right.
And some of that has to do with having more to lose. And, the risk-taking has been diminished somewhat. And I'd love to see us continue to push for those top jobs, because until there are women running news divisions, as there are gratefully now in at least one network, and women running these companies, we're still going to be largely dependent on a patriarchal view of the world.
Yeah.
And that will only change when women in larger numbers come into these jobs with responsibilities. The other thing, though, frankly, Robin, that I worry even more about, and that is that women once in those jobs are still doing those jobs exactly as the men did them before them.
Oh, yes.
And until we redefine what we bring to our positions as journalists, as producers, and as executives, we're not going to change the way media looks. We're not going to change the stories that media covers. We're not going to change the impact that media can, and in fact does, have on lives all over the world.
No, that's the real arbiter, not to be an imitation man or a token at the table, and to bring other women along. You've become, whatever the opposite of notorious is, belovedly famous for mentoring other women, and you're doing it now at the Paley, and you're doing it through TEDx Women, and recommend to the women who haven't done that why it's good, not only for the mentor, but the mentoree, but the mentor.
It's the single biggest lever we have within our own power to bring about change. The single biggest one, I believe. And it's the one that those of us who started early in whatever endeavor we were in, but particularly in media where there were so few of us in the beginning, we didn't have that. I mean, you couldn't find allies, much less mentors.
Yeah.
So I always longed for one and felt so grateful when I would find a woman who would listen and help and guide me, and I did have some, thank goodness. So the greatest joy of being a mentor is seeing that you are able to do that for another woman. And I see in every instance where I've taken the time, and it does take time, and it does take a commitment to pay attention to someone else's needs and life and career goals. It makes a big difference. I do believe it's a secret weapon. That if we did more of that, both collectively, as women are beginning to do in some of the bigger companies, but also individually, we'd start to move it. One woman at a time is too slow. There's no question about that. But one woman at a time is a step forward that we can't afford not to take, and especially since it's in our power to make it happen.
Yeah, it's also enlightened self-interest, I should think, because it ensures that the work you've done yourself will last. And in fact, get better.
Sorry, Ron. That's the very best part about this award, honestly, is Lifetime Achievement Award. That sounds great, although it's a little intimidating to think lifetime anything. But the very best part is that this award will go on to recognize other women who do that, because that's my most important message now at this point in my life. It's just not enough for each of us to take a step forward. We have got to put a hand behind and bring the woman who's coming up the steps of the ladder. And we've got to take the time out of our own crazy, busy lives to give other women what they need most to also be a success, to also accomplish what they want to accomplish.
And so that each generation doesn't have to reinvent the wheel and then stand back and say, oh, look, it rolls,
Absolutely.
All right. We have only about a minute or two left. Pat, what dare I ask this? What has been the source in your career or your life of your greatest, if not regret, sorrow or sadness? And And comparably, what's been the source of your greatest pride? This is a question I've asked of women around the world, and the answers are always very interesting.
Well, I mean, specifically, I think one of the times that I most regret is the time I didn't listen to my own inner voice and know that what I knew was the right thing for me to do. It had to do with a specific show, that Woman to Woman, which was the first national show for women, owned and produced and hosted by women, and really answering a need that wasn't there. When we hit financial trouble, I let everybody else's voices prevail. And I wish I'd not done that. When I look back on my career, that's one regret I have, because I could have done that differently. I could have believed more strongly in myself. So that was a lesson I took out of that, and I take now into every day of my life.
Interesting. And the greatest pride?
My greatest joy, I have so many, because I've had so many wonderful opportunities to make a difference. So I guess my greatest joy comes every time I hear someone say, that program you produced changed my life in some way, that speech you gave, that moment you took to listen to me. Those are my moments of greatest joy.
You know, when Women's Media Center decided to create the first Lifetime Achievement Award and do so in your name and to be awarded to you, it was an absolute no-brainer. Not only because of the Renaissance woman kind of role that you played in media, but because, excuse me, and this is quite extraordinary, you're very loved, Pat, and I will let our listeners in on my nickname for Pat, who was our first board chair and who is a friend, and my nickname for her is Tachyon. Which is a postulated particle in physics, and it's a postulated particle that exists postulated only because it moves faster than the speed of light, but it leaves a trail of light behind. And I have never encountered anybody, Gloria and I were saying this the other day, whom both people who have power love and respect, and people who don't have power love and respect. And you managed to be that bridge. So you should know that.
That's the nicest thing anyone ever said about me.
well,
I can't tell you how grateful I am for that. To think that you and Gloria, who literally changed the world, would describe me as having a trail of light, when you have blazing trails of light.
You definitely
the work
do.
That you've done, and in front of the work you continue.
We're so proud to give you this award, and we hope that it will also inspire you, because lifetime achievement can sound lugubrious, but we feel that you're just getting started, and we hope that you get inspired by this to do something and make something of yourself for the rest of your life. Because you've been.
I promise, Robin, I will continue being a tachyon now that I know what it is.
That is so lovely. Thank you so much for being on Women's Media Center Live, and we're very, very proud of you and everything you've done, and even more of everything you're yet going to do. We'll take another break here. This is Women's Media Center Live, the talk show with a brain, and I'm Robin Morgan. Do you know what an all-platform journalist is? We'll find out in just a minute. After Hurricane Sandy, parts of the East Coast have returned to normal, but others won't see normal again for quite some time. One group getting volunteers and aid supplies to those who need it is called Occupy Sandy. Made up of a coalition of Occupy Wall Street activists, community organizers, and technologists, Occupy Sandy is using social media and other software tools to identify and quickly respond to urgent needs among the hardest-hit communities. You can help. To donate or to volunteer, visit occupysandy.org.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 gov.biz radio, a CBS station.
We're back. Our last guest is an all-platform journalist for CNN. She's going to receive the Carol Jenkins Emerging Journalist Award at the Women's Media Center Awards Gala. Here is Sarah Hoye. Welcome, Sarah, to Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we're delighted to celebrate you, and I want to start by congratulating you as the honoree, as the all-platform journalist who will receive the Carol Jenkins Emerging Journalist Award. It seems to me, though, that you've already emerged in quite a stellar fashion with a Peabody Award. I mean, my God. Tell me, what is an all-platform journalist?
Well, it's a little bit exactly what the title says. So, depending on what story I'm covering, determines where the content would go, if you will. So, in terms of all platforms, I'm able to shoot video and stills, edit those videos and stills, as well as write print pieces and or text stories for .com. So, whoever needs what it is I'm working on gets it.
My God. So you're doing everything at the same time. You're your own, in a sense, tech person, and you write, you cover the story, you write the copy, you deliver it, you film it, you're a Renaissance woman. That's what all platform means.
Well, yes, I do it all. So from start to finish, that's me. Sometimes I do get to work with crews from the New York bureau. However, the majority of the time, it is me working on the work from start to finish.
Is this common? I mean, or does one escalate from this as a young journalist these days into then having the luxury of a crew?
Well, I think in terms of what I do, I don't necessarily know if it is common. I think when it comes to the story itself, so if you're doing something like Penn State scandal or Hurricane Sandy, one person can't cover that. You need the crew because of the demands for which the audience needs. So it all kind of depends on what the story is. However, I have covered national stories, big stories, elements of them by myself. So in terms of how you get to where I am, per se, being able to do everything, the shooting, the writing, the editing, I think you morph into that. I started off as a print reporter for newspapers. I was a features reporter for a long time. And I kind of evolved into the ultimate mojo, multimedia journalist, if you will. So, I mean, everything that I started to learn over time was because of the market demand. As the newspaper started to lay off more and more folks, you needed to have more and more skills to be competitive. You needed to have more and more skills because there just weren't enough people in the newsroom. So eventually, I kind of became this multimedia journalist out of sheer necessity, and actually love a lot of what it is that I do. I mean, I never thought that I'd love looking through. I never thought I'd be able to create such visually stunning work. I just always saw myself as a print reporter, and here I am today.
Wow, it is very impressive. And among the stories that you've covered nationally are violent teen mobs and in Catholic priest sex scandal. I think you did the Gulf spill too, didn't you? Yeah.
Yes.
Is there one story in particular that wrung your heart or got your attention excited you in a way that nothing else had?
I think so many of them touch you differently, but in terms of I think stories that have really stuck with me since I began doing this in 2010 really has been the priest abuse trial. I mean, I was really a part of that from start to finish. Being raised in Milwaukee, also raised Catholic, I had an inside baseball view. However, I've never been able to cover something literally from the grand jury presentment until the sentencing. So many of us reporters don't get that chance. We pick things up after the grand jury presentment, or we swoop in during a few days of the trial, or we report on a sentencing. But literally, this was a 3-month trial. This thing had been going on for over a year. It just really kind of puts you front row seat to history. But also, stories that stuck out with me was covering the tornadoes in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where you walk into a place, you get off the airport, everything's normal looking until you drive an hour and it looks as though a bomb went off on half the side of town, where the other half, where the university is, still in pristine condition with maybe a few trees down. People lost everything. People were crying in the streets. stuff like that. And also in Philadelphia, I did a wonderful story on a fabulous group here, Philadelphia Youth Poetry Movement, which is young people using spoken word to express themselves. And I had never seen a group of students so dedicated to learning the art form of writing on Saturdays. These kids could be doing anything, but here they are, instead of a lunchroom, writing. So I followed them for about 6 months, and that sticks with you too, because it lets you know that real people do exist.
Yes, real people definitely do exist. And you know what? They don't think that poetry is anathema. What a concept. You know?
Correct.
Yeah.
And here in Philadelphia, you have Sonia Sanchez, who is now the city's poet laureate.
I know.
Who is also, an inspiration to these young people. I mean, when you have 15, 16-year-olds who are able to say, yes, I know who Sonia Sanchez is, that tells you something.
Yeah, no, that's very cool. Have you, as you know what the Women's Media Center does, of course, the shorthand version is to make women visible and powerful in media, and Carol, who is our founding president and for whom your award to be is named, has written and spoken very compellingly about the bias, the discrimination of the pale male media, both in terms of women and in terms all women and also men of color. What has your experience been? I mean, is it getting a little bit better for younger women, or have you come a cropper up against this a number of times, or tell us a little about that.
Well, what's interesting is that even from growing up, I'm one of 4 adopted children. Grew up in Milwaukee, which is one of the most segregated cities in America, right?
Yeah,
so
yes.
I'm mixed. I'm half Italian, half South African. Milwaukee's a predominantly white city.
Mm-hmm.
So growing up, where I was pretty much the oddball out, same thing with my siblings. We were kind of the one black kid in class, the one Asian kid in class. Oddly enough, that's translated to 2012.
Yep.
A lot of places where I've gone as newsrooms, and especially in features departments, I am not only the only black reporter, oftentimes I'm one of the only young female reporters, which is interesting to me. You may have thought we'd be a little further along.
You'd think.
CNN is a little different, of course. Obviously, I mean it's a major news organization. So you have a lot of people from a lot of places doing a lot of great things.
Yeah.
I really have to tip my hat to them. But even still, on my team alone, I'm the only female reporter. Mm-hmm. I'm the only black female reporter on that team. So I mean, it's interesting sometimes. I also feel though, I mean, I can do anything anybody can do, if not better.
If not better, I was just about to say, yeah. Well, you clearly do. We're working our tushies off to move this along faster, because that's appalling in 2012 that you're experiencing being a oneer or a twofer.
Right.
That's enough of this already. Enough. We only have a minute or so left, but there's a quote of yours that I just love, and I hope you'll explain it for our listeners. Being a journalist is not just what I do, you've been quoted as saying. It's who I am. Say why it's who you are.
For me, being a reporter, being a journalist, wasn't something I just went off to college and grad school to do. This was a calling. I was called to do it. There are people there who have stories the world needs to hear, and I've been fortunate enough to be able to tell those stories. So I truly believe I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, which is why I say being a journalist is who I am.
Oh, well, who you are is pretty damn terrific, and I look forward to meeting you and congratulating you in person at the awards. And
likewise, I look forward to meeting you and also the legendary Carol.
And now it's time for Fighting Words. The endless election finally being over. Now the pundit analysis has started. How did this all come about? The surge of women, for example. Was it merely a spontaneous response to religious fundamentalist assaults on women's rights? Duh. Plus, was it any number of offensive comments by male candidates or press? Duh. The answer really, though, is yes and no. Actually, see, guys, there's this thing called the women's movement. It has been urging, training, and backing women to run for office for years. That, in turn, influenced the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee led by Senator Patty Murray. of Washington State, who took pride in repeating the record number of female candidates that she and it had recruited. She said, "When we started this campaign, no one, and I mean no one, gave us a chance, but we went out and built the best Senate campaigns in the history of the country." Now, that's a pragmatic but principled strategy that serves party interests and, more importantly, opens a pipeline for women to gain power. The Republican Party would be smart to do the same, but seems to just not get it. Nor does it get the seismic shift in demographics. For instance, that the Hispanic community is the fastest-growing, quote, minority, unquote, in the country. Poor right-wingers scratching their white male heads. Was it the second debate, they wonder? Or the economy improving? Or Hurricane Sandy highlighting the difference in compassion and capacity between Obama and Romney? It was all of the above, plus the dismal presidential candidate that was Mitt, a robotic, vapid, silver foot in his mouth, opportunistic, avaricious chameleon, his polygamy-acquired DNA that of a Mormon bishop crossed with Gordon Gekko. There's another crucial element, too. We won because our ideas are better, and because this time we fought harder and smarter than before. Naturally, the disloyal opposition now claims the election was fraudulent, the results not legitimate, just as, in their conspiratorial, surreal world, Obama's birth certificate, his birthplace, his college transcripts, and his graduation documents must not be legitimate either. The one thing in their world you can count on to be legitimate, I guess, is rape. And that's it for this week. You've been listening to us on CBS station 1580 gov.biz AM radio in Washington, D.C., and on the web at WMClive.com, which also has podcasts of previous shows. Remember to email us at womensmediacenterlive@gmail.com. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Views expressed here do not represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and for this program Executive Producer Julie Burton, Senior Producer Crystal Williams-Chancellor, Technical Director Michelle Kinsey-Bruns, Production Assistant Nora Eakin, Board Operator Whitney Hunt, and our founding sponsor Regina Kulik-Scully. I'm Robin Morgan. Next week, the WMC Social Media Award winner and the journalist Ling sisters, Lisa and Laura, plus the politics of meat eating and a whistle campaign for women's safety. Intrigued? Join us next Saturday, 11 a.m. here at Women's Media Center Live.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 gov.biz radio, a CBS station.